Howdy, folks. I'm Rebecca Jolly, the Jolly Alchemist, here for another crazy adventure in the transits. Today we are looking at Sunday, the 26th of October, 2025. All right, and I've just had some insights. I've fixed some things. I've realized the risks I need to take and the risks I don't. So let's talk about risk taking. All right, what's first? Okay, running at high speed here. I realized that the reason the transits weren't making me happy was because it had turned me into a machine, into something that the AI can do. And as my friend Andreas at 64 Keys recently said, we need to stop doing the things that AI can do. And that's exactly what I need to do. I need to start doing what I can do. So what I'm going to do is I don't want to deny you folks the ability to see what the transits are, because people following behind me need to see the transits for themselves, people who are tracking them. All 5 of you, or however many there are, who are actually looking at these recordings. So I do want to show you the numbers, right? What I've done, so that you can see what I'm looking at as my source material, and then I'm going to talk about the stuff that's related, but also to me and my process and what's going on and what I need to talk about that's more than the transits, actually. So I'm going to switch the camera here and show you the materials, so that if you want to pause the camera and study those, cool, you can, and then I can move on to saying what I need to say. So here we go. All right, so here's the transit material for today. All right, so this is also information that it's pretty easy to get by going to 64 Keys, getting your own account, and looking up the transit and seeing how it affects your body. But these are the transit energies that are going throughout the day. So just as a real quick overview, we're starting off at 14.3, but we are also seeing 14.4 happen in the day. So I gave that one 57.1, and then also the range, one edge of the range, the up range, supposedly up and down, doesn't matter, just left, right, it could be, one or the other. And then let's see, 57.1, that's there, and we also go into 57.2, so I give that, and 43.5 I gave, because we already talked about that yesterday. Or not, we didn't talk about that yesterday. Let me give you the information that was from yesterday. Come on, focus. All right, so that you can see that. And let me give you a picture of the people. We are on the cross of the unexpected. Haha, isn't that magical? That this shit happens on the cross of the unexpected. It's great. So there, for those of you who want to look at it yourselves. And here we have the transit for today. And of course, if you're looking for an example, you can see how it is affecting my body, that particularly for me, I'm getting this whole entire channel of nurturing while this transit is going on, and we're looking at gate 27. I'm getting the entire integration circuit because of 20 being in Uranus. I'm getting a little bit of extra support, but I won't be feeling those nearly so much. And a few extra opportunities, particularly crisis and moodiness, ideas, the ability to make sense of confusion, resources, some sort of a emphasis on retaining the old, which is good for me because I'm likely to throw out the whole entire thing myself, which I have done. Oh, I've been a phoenix. Yes, I have. And here we are, the major gate of being able to take a risk. Now we're moving into risky behavior. This is the kind of thing that happens when I go on a power-up and everybody around me gets scared and goes, oh God, what's she going to do next? Is she going to take off her clothes? God damn it, we've seen enough of that woman's boobies. Well, by now I call them the titties of justice. So you know if I'm taking my shirt off, some shit is wrong and needs to be fixed. Anyway, that's another story. Part of what I realized is I don't have to tell the stories of every single thing that I went through on my, frankly, largely seemingly crazy journey to get here. The important thing is not to tell the exact stories of who, why, where, and what, and back it all up, because I got lots and lots of time for that. The important thing is to tell what I learned from it. Yeah, it's not about every time I went crazy and sat there in the funny farm with crazy people going, whoa, to the things that they had to say, which were actually sometimes really wise. It was, what did I learn at the end of that? Okay, let's put it in human design terms. All right, so we're talking about gate or this channel here, the channel of adventures, the jack of all trades. So we're talking about gate 36, which is in the transits right now, an emotional crisis that leads to an experience, and you must submit to the experience. Boy, have I submitted. More than one person would say I have submitted far too much to those experiences. And after you've submitted to the experience, when it's done, not when you're in it, when it's done, you can look back and make sense of it and speak from the throat about those emotional truths. And that is exactly what I've done long before I even knew that that was the wiring of what I was doing, that was the electrical that was the electrical activity happening on an energetic or spiritual level in my body. Speaking of which, I don't know how much these chakras and channels and gates and stuff like that, I don't know how much that's actually physically a thing in our bodies. Maybe at some point in the future, scientists will get on board and study this to an extent that we can actually find these things in our bodies. I suspect that they are in our bodies in a way that's maybe not as easy to see as veins and arteries and organs and stuff like that. But I think that there are these pathways. In a way, I don't know. There's something in me that doesn't feel quite right about going like this when you're talking about a channel. Oh, this is where my opinions go. This is where my ideas go, kind of a thing. And also, we have to remember that this picture of the body graph is not actually the way it is in the body, because, of course, we have the spleen over here and the solar plexus over here. Well, body-wise, we know the solar plexus is right here. So, how would that be? But we also have to remember that this is a 2D representation of a human body. Well, the body doesn't splay out like that. It's kind of like those old diagrams where they were learning how to dissect animals and things, and they would pin them to a board, and they would just kind of stretch out the stomach and pin it there, and then stretch out the lungs and pin it there, and you get this kind of like exploded 2D version of a frog or a whatever. And that's kind of more like what this is. It's spreading it out and showing you those connections, but those connections aren't necessarily in the body just like that. Yeah. So a quick example. This channel here that I have, this channel of persuasion, it's on the chart. It comes up here on the 34, then it wanders along here for a while, and then it comes around to the G center through the 10. But actually, that's a direct connection. That's it's actually kind of going like this. But because it's connected with these other things and it needs to be laid out so that you can look at it and see those relationships, it looks like it's, doing this whole detour thing around. Okay, anyway, back to what I want to talk about, because that's actually about risks and about nurturing. So the keys of yesterday. Oh, and by the way, this tie doesn't mean anything today. It's just, it was sitting around left over from when we were doing something about the world and nature, and I like this tie, so I was like, okay, I'll wear it today. But I'm going to start choosing new ties because I have so many thousands of them. I need to show off all my cool toys. So, maybe not thousands, maybe thousands. Anyway, risks. Today we're looking at shaking hands with the devil. Ooh, and I have actually done that. Ooh, and it's risky behavior, all right? And I don't necessarily recommend it for everyone, but I'm an experimenter, a big experimenter. And you don't have to take the risks that I'm taking. You don't have to walk down the street naked. You don't have to get in fights with garbage trucks or do all the weird things that I've done. And by the way, those weird things that I did, they were submitting to an experience that I myself did not understand in the moment. And it took, in some cases, years, sometimes decades, for me to understand these things. For instance, remember how yesterday I was talking about the Keebler elves that get busy when I make a wish? A real wish, a serious wish, maybe any wish, I don't know. But I'm starting to realize which one of those random wishes that I made in the past, seemingly random, have swung back around and been super, super important to my life in terms of what risks I was going to take. Sure, and I'll tell this story. At the very beginning of my journey, when I had just left the Mormon church and I was rootless. So basically, I had done a phoenix. I had burned my life down completely. Okay, not completely, but almost completely. So I had completely separated from my entire family, all my friends, every single one. My job, my landlord, my house, my children. They did take my children away in the beginning for a little while. They gave them back quickly because in the end, nobody wanted them. But yeah, at that time, what I discovered, because, at first I was looking for, do I need a new religion? Do I need a God? Who is God? Who am I? All these kinds of things were swirling around in my mind, and I was trying to figure out. Actually, it was very interesting because I came out of the cult of Mormonism, and the cult of Mormonism is based on the story of little Joe Smith in the woods with his little golden plates, trying to find out, what's the right way, and the angel comes to him from on high. Goody for him, he gets a fucking sticker because he couldn't figure it out himself. He needed an angel to come tell him. Well, I didn't have an angel. What I had was what you're looking at, my body, right? But I actually went through a very similar process. And I have to thank my father for a moment for, golly, I'm getting distracted, but it's okay. It's okay. It's all part of the process. I am going to swing back around because I know where I'm heading eventually. So my father said to me, he's a staunch Mormon, still is, and bless his heart. But I'm finding more and more the little bits and pieces that he gave me that did help, that did contribute. And one of them was when he said, okay, little child, one day, I'm paraphrasing vastly. Maybe he'll come on one day and say his version of what he really said. But this is what I remember. So that's the important piece. One day you'll have a crisis of faith in the church, and then you just need to ask the Holy Ghost, just like I did, for the truth, and that will be revealed to you, and then you'll know, like I do, that the church is true and good forever. And now I know, well, it might have been true for him because it's a boys' club. It's great for boys. Get yourself a few women slaves, get yourself a few child slaves, you're all good to go. And then you can go to heaven where you can continue to do the same thing. Jolly. But what was working for me was none of the religions. I tried some other ones. I tried Unitarianism. None of them. After the cult, I just could not handle any uh anything that even hinted at worship or faith or or whatever. I had to have faith in me, because part of what I realized right then in the beginning was that the power that I had given to something outside of myself was actually just a deeper or more central part of me. So I submitted to myself, to my own wisdom, which of course took me in some crazy places, because I know where I'm swinging back around to. I'm not getting lost. Because I discovered is a part of this thing, and I don't know how it happened, but thank goodness. In fact, I remember even being a little bit concerned at the time, because the book that I found was this old book from like the 60s. It looked really, really old. And it was called The Nature of Personal Reality by Jane Roberts. And I thought, oh, this is weird. And it's so deep. It's so meaty. It's so intense. Maybe there's something here. And I started deep diving into this book. This is so long ago. This is 1999 when this was happening to me. And part of what happened as I started to study Jane Roberts was that I realized she was channeling. And I said to myself, in one of these moments that I thought wasn't really important at the time, it took me more than 2 decades to realize the importance of that moment. I was sitting in this little indoor playground where I was working in the nights to clean and make extra money, because my husband had decided that I only needed $585 a month in order to support his children. And so I was doing night cleaning to try to do something to bring in more money so that I could get socks and underwear for my kids. And I just sent out this random wish. I'd like to be able to know what it's like to channel like Jane Roberts. And I actually did a little bit of it then, because she talked about the process. She said, okay, here's how you do automatic writing. You just sit, you do. And I did. I sat and do. And pretty quickly, my awareness split into 2, and I started having a conversation with myself. One side was saying, okay, I'm sitting here doing this thing. And the other goes, yeah, it feels pretty weird, doesn't it? Yeah, it does feel weird, but here I am submitting to it. Okay, well, what are you going to do with it? Oh, well, I'm going to figure out. And in this conversation, I was writing both sides of it. And I realized pretty quickly, oh, okay, that could actually be something. So, okay, I can see how this is related to the roots of Jane Roberts learning how to channel. And then, of course, anyone who knows the history of Jane Roberts knows that she channeled this being named Seth for years, a long time. She made a huge fucking library of information from this dude. So it's not just like, oh, I see spirits and shit like that. It was very technical information and very wise. And one of the things that I've realized, and I am getting ready to swing back around, I'm not on a tangent, is that that information that came from the courage of Jane to submit to her experience, how beautiful. Submitting to something that at the time seemed so crazy, but was really, truly a pioneering act, an act of pure bravery. Wow, Jane. So anyway, that material that came from her and Seth, what's the word I'm looking for? Not founded, it inspired. It inspired basically every single person since then who has been in the field of woo stuff, like Richard Bach, who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Oh, what a beautiful book that is. And I actually was able to read that as a child. Thank you, my parents, for giving me that. Yeah, that was beautiful. And it led me on the journey that through many trials and troubles and difficult times and extreme poverty got me to here, where I'm not poor anymore, and I'm not, hopefully, quite as extreme as I used to be. Not quite of a as much of a chaos bunny. That's what I call it now. A chaos bunny as I used to be. I've got it maybe, hopefully, a little bit more in control isn't the word. What the word is that I've had so many crazy experiences that now they're starting to actually come together and make sense. And that's the thing that I can do that AI cannot do. Make sense of the confusion. Gate 47. Because I have been conditioned by that 47th gate for more than a decade now. Right here. See? Beautiful. And so I have some practice. I have some wisdom. It's not a place in my chart where I actually have definition, but the point of human design is not to limit ourselves and realize that, oh, this is all I have. This is my wiring. So this over here I can't do. How many times have I said in the transits, we all have everything, not all the time. Well, in some ways, the areas of our charts that we have that are white areas or areas where we do not have constant energy are the places where we can gain more wisdom than people who carry this information or carry this energy all the time. But they can also be every side has its strengths and weaknesses. If we stop making judgments about it and just realize here are the places in our bodies where energy actually runs, here are the issues that are central to every human, then you can say, oh, okay, how do these issues show up in my life? Okay, in my life, it's shown up that I seem to have a conscious skill for explaining. And I am swinging around because I'm getting to Neil Cassidy, who did not have a conscious ability to explain things. And you say, what does Neil Cassidy have to do with it? Well, Neil Cassidy is another one of these figures that doesn't really get a lot of airtime because he didn't ever write anything down. That's why. But Jane Roberts wrote it all fucking down, and she's slid real easy into the cracks of history. So it doesn't seem to matter. It seems like you can make your impact in a bunch of different ways. Jane Roberts made her impact by writing it all down so that other people could follow in the path behind her. Neil Cassidy made his impact by talking to every single fucking important figure of the time in a magical way. And those people wrote that shit down. So he was Neil Cassidy. Let's do that. Let's take the time for that. Neil Cassidy was just a dude. Actually, he has a lot in common with me because I looked up his chart. Let's look at that real quick. Let me take this off my stand here and look up all right, so let me pull this and we go to look at Neil. Okay, here's Neil Cassidy. Well, we don't know exactly, but I looked at the 12 charts or 9 charts, and I do think that this is the one. So when we're looking at today, we have a choice of having only one channel in the throat, unconscious, and not actual activations down here. But my intuition is telling me actually that he was born in the middle of the day. And maybe somebody will tell me wrong, but until I know better, I think he was born in the middle of the day. I think he was a 1-3 coordinator. And I'll tell you why later. Well, it's not for sure, but until we know better, let's go on this one. Yeah, until we know better, let's go with this one. Oh yeah, he wouldn't be a 6-3 because he's definitely cross of explanation. Oh shit, he could be 6-3. Let me look at this real quick. Okay. Well, I'll look at that later. But what's important to look at is this is the general proposed chart of Neil Cassidy. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay, so let's guess for a moment that he is this chart. This would make him cross of explanation version 1. And so that would be the version of the mind. This guy was born in Salt Lake City, like me, and raised basically in flop houses and on the streets, on the very, very lowest level of society in Denver, basically, because his mother died real early, and he actually said he didn't have any memories of his mother, which I thought, ooh, that's telling, because she supposedly didn't die until he was 10. Anyway, that's not the relevant part of the story. He was raised in Denver by a massively alcoholic father, which means he wasn't really raised at all. So he basically ended up being adopted in some ways by by the homeless community in Denver. And then he came up and he met all these people. He was a bit of a womanizer, if you look at it from the outside, and a ne'er-do-well, a criminal, a car thief, all these things that nobody in society really looks up to. But at the same time, he was a massive intelligence. And no matter, oh, no, it's not true. He didn't necessarily have a splenic activation. But he supposedly had photographic memory, which I believe because of what I've heard of him in later stories. And long story short, he basically talked to all the people that were the movers and shakers. So he didn't actually do the moving and shaking. And the reason why, I have learned, is because he was, in my terms, too magical. He was too magical for actually being pinned down. And to say that is not to say that he wasn't broken. It's not to say that he didn't abandon, all 5 or so of his children that we know of. There might be more, because of how, let's say, generous he was. Yes, he was very generous. So he might have more children. But, and by the way, I don't blame the women, because what a hunk that guy was. Wow. And when you put that face and that body together with that intellect and that level of magic, true in the moment magic, I'd have fucked him too. So, he influenced the entire Beat generation. In fact, it might not be too far out to say that he started the Beat generation, because he talked to Ginsberg and Ken Kesey and the Grateful Dead, the Merry Pranksters, Kerouac, did I say Ginsberg? More. I don't remember all of them, but those ones for sure. And those are the people that we look at as having been the founding fathers of the generation directly before the hippies and the whole entire 60s. Well, who started the 60s? Ginsberg, Kerouac, Ken Kesey, the Grateful Dead, Merry Pranksters, those guys. So all those guys basically were in love with Cassidy. On one level or another. I'm certainly in love with Cassidy. Just the glimpse of the memory that exists still from this amazing human. And okay, I'm swinging around to the piece that's important, and that is I have a tendency to digress. But you know what? I have the time to do that. This is my channel. This is my forum. I can talk as long as I goddamn well want to. Although my editor does complain about how long it takes to upload when I make long videos. Oh, well. Cassidy, in his prime, was a force of nature. Yeah. The people who were able to witness him driving the further bus, if you know anything about those old stories, or if you've seen any of the old footage of what they were doing with that, basically, what was it? It was memorialized as the acid Kool-Aid test. I read that book. It was fascinating. fascinating about the trip, about the bus, and I also saw the movie about it at some point because, of course, in my wiring, I'm very wired to be looking at the past and learning lessons from that and sharing those lessons. So here I am sharing those lessons. I'm saying that stuff is really fascinating to explore if you're interested in consciousness raising, psychedelics, the evolution of the mind, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, let me condense. This man would drive the bus, rotate the tires, be in charge of, basically he was the dad on the trip, yeah? Even though he was just as high as anybody else. But he had the ability to be able to be as high as anybody else and drive a bus at the same time and organize the rotations of the tires. It was very interesting to see. And he could hold conversations with I don't know how many people at the same time, all at the same time, and throw a hammer and catch it over and over again. And he had his shit worked out so that the radio would play things that supported what he was saying, either energetically, emotionally, lyric-wise, all these kinds of things. So he was just he was a vortex. He was a force of nature, and pretty much everybody who came around him was just like, okay, what the fuck is going on with this guy? Because he's doing this rambling, point of consciousness kind of talking, and yet everyone who comes to him to talk is getting the little piece out of him. So they're telling that he's making sense of it. He wrote letters, and some of those letters were what inspired things like On the Road to be written, and golly, what's that one? It turned into a movie about Las Vegas and the Caribbean dude and all that weirdness there. I don't remember the name of that movie, but it was pretty famous because the Caribbean dude was in it. Who was that guy? Pirates of the Caribbean dude, whatever. Anyway, so many of these things are actually inspired by Cassidy, and yet hardly anybody even knows who he was anymore, except for some of the old oldies, and where are they? They're not exactly sitting around giving us their wisdom anymore, because as, what is that, Walking on the Sun says, the hippie movement turned into a fashion, into a fashion statement rather than actually any actual growing up. As a digression, in the beginning of my journey, I wished, oh, how I wished when I discovered the Grateful Dead, that I could have been alive when they were, and of course, there's remnants, the seeds, yeah, that's important. But I was very sad to have missed the actual times. And now I realize, oh, I was there. I was, at some concert. I was singing and dancing and doing the things. I'm sure maybe, my partner and I have postulated that we died in a mutual drug overdose at the time. Who knows? It's all right. It only hurts when you're alive. But this is actually the interesting time, because now we see the evolution of that foundation that was laid for those of us who really, really want to expand our consciousness and rise above and evolve on a mental level, yeah? Wow, seeing so many of those roots. Yeah, so Cassidy, this magical being. He didn't necessarily have it all together. This is like what I was talking about yesterday, where there were spikes where you could see. It was obvious to everyone who had anything to do with Cassidy, the genius of this human who came from nothing, had nothing, didn't have an education, died, not technically, but for all intents and purposes, walking on the train tracks in Mexico. Fascinating story, but he was a magical being. All right, let's just say it like that. There's other ways to say it, but for now, that's the way I want to say it, because that's the way I perceived it as I learned it. And having seen someone who is also kind of like that, for some of these people, and it doesn't excuse what they did. It doesn't excuse the emotional trauma that they left behind in their wake. Okay, this is something that's important to say. But in these two cases that I'm talking about, there was, if you look at it from a grander scale, there was maybe a justification for that, even though the children who were left over had to find their way without a father. Or in the case of this other person that I'm talking about, her name is Holly. She's dead now, so okay, we can talk about her behind her back. She knows, she understands. I'm wearing her ring to remember her by and to carry that energy forward, hopefully in a less crazy and detrimental to other people way. But the lesson is there to learn after these people are gone, that the kind of magic that they hold is something very precious to the world, because there aren't that many people who are willing to make the experiment to go down to the depths. And this is part of what I also have done to an extent. It's all relative, because when I was hanging out with this friend of mine, Holly, she was a mother to 7 children that we know of. And maybe there's some that she didn't know of either, huh? She, in some ways, did not do very well by her children. There were many times that I went over there and those kids were hungry, and I had to figure out some way to help them eat, even though I was struggling to help my own children eat. But if we separate the sides of both of these people, okay? On one side, we have Cassidy and Holly, born low, stayed low, roustabouts, criminals, crazy people, unhinged, and then bad parents, ne'er-do-wells. On the other side, you have the fact that they were carrying a level of being in the moment, connection with some other goals, some other experiences, and following the magic. I was born long after Cassidy died, but I was able to see the shadow of that in my friend Holly. And in the few times that I was able to go adventuring with her, those are some of the most precious memories I hold. When we would be driving to, I don't know where I was submitting. I wasn't driving. And she would just go, oh, here we go. We need to turn right now. And we'd be off. And we'd end up in this magical place where there's a leftover river in Las Vegas. I don't even know where we were. It's probably gone now. And sat down and took off all her clothes and looked at rocks and found all these heart rocks. Okay, this is a digression. The point is that the woman lived in a different reality where different things were important, and she was looking at those things. She was very concerned with the have-nots rather than the haves. So she was kind of like a mother to those who have not had mothers. That's an important thing. How many people do we know that do that? Mother Teresa has become famous. She's also dead. And you know what? There's a lot more homeless and needy children out there than Mother Teresa ever touched. Whatever level, we all agree that Mother Teresa was this wonderful human. I've heard rumors to the contrary, so I don't know. I don't judge, but it is what it is. And what it is that we have these figures who are rather important, doing important things, but because they're not getting money, they're not getting acclaim from the haves, only the have-nots, it's a different kind of life. And I've seen bits and pieces of that life enough to see that there was something important going on there. And I have studied the charts of those people, Holly and now Neil Cassidy, to see the roots of what's going on, and looked back at the stories with the charts to see, oh, okay, I'm starting to see where some of the roots of these behaviors were that other people thought were crazy. Now, I am on a mission. I am headed for an actual goal, and it is to talk about nurturing and risky behavior, but it's also to talk about the unexpected. And I'm following down that rabbit hole. So I'm coming to the end of this chapter. I'm still going to be talking about the groove and Neil Cassidy. Put a pin in it. I think maybe what I will do is just continue to talk about it now, just in another video set for tomorrow. Because here's the thing. I've been time traveling as a result of these transits, and I didn't think I had been. But now I recognize that I actually have been, and I can explain it. So come back tomorrow. We'll talk about line 3. I will be wildly experimental. I will take wild risks. We will talk about time travel. We'll talk about the groove. We'll continue to talk about Neil Cassidy and Holly, these crazy, wild, in terms of society and the higher-ups, completely disreputable people. But you know what? I'm completely disreputable too. I lost my reputation back in 2001. So fuck it. Let's talk about the things that happened that are beyond reputation and into the reality of experience. So come back tomorrow and I'll give you another dose of this. Ciao.